Welcome to a little mini episode of Alpenglow. If you've stumbled across this unlisted video from the previous episode, that probably means you're either really bored or you're actually interested in getting a glimpse into what the bus lines of Alpenglow look like. So this is just some footage I recorded of me trying to rename the bus lines that I have, color coding them, trying to make them a bit logical, a bit realistic, but without making them boringly so. I want them to be a little strange at points, like if you were trying to take a bus somewhere, you'd have to do a little bit of thinking to figure out the best route to get there, because that's usually the case in real life, is there are just some quirks and some interesting design choices in terms of where the bus lines go, what they look like, what they're called. But I know this is a pretty niche interest, and it's not exactly the most exciting footage to watch, so I didn't want to clutter up the main series and the main playlist with this video, thus why it is unlisted and really completely optional. You're not going to miss anything if you don't watch the rest of this video, although if you are interested, I will certainly appreciate the view, so thanks for being here. Anyway, I'm going to try to do my best to describe what the original logic of the bus route or the bus system is, which is essentially that each neighborhood or general area has a bus line, and that bus line will either meet up at a local bus station where transfers can be made, or they'll have overlapping stops with a bus line that eventually does go to one of these stations, assuming this local bus line does not. And so the point is that from any given neighborhood, or at least most of the neighborhoods, some of the more suburban ones that are kind of on the fringe of downtown don't have great bus access, which is, a downside, I suppose, of living in the suburbs. And they're not strictly speaking suburbs, but they're they're closer to being suburbs as opposed to some of these more urban neighborhoods. But anyway, the idea is that you could catch a bus in any given neighborhood, and then without having to make more than one transfer, you could get to one of the hubs of the city, which would be either downtown, of course, with a big transfer station there, or Cardston, which is the second biggest kind of main business district in the town, or in the vicinity of Alpenglow. And then there are a couple smaller transfer stations. There's one in Midtown, which is between downtown and Cardston. It's kind of what the area we're hovering over now. And then there's one over to the east, which I believe is called Chanson, is what I called it. Although, as far as the city has been developed so far, I haven't, in terms of what you're seeing in this video, I have not actually built that yet, but eventually it will be built, of course. So yeah, basically the idea is that there are various stations, transfer stations spread around, hopefully to lighten the load for any given station, and also just to spread out access to the transit network. So I had all these named in accordance with those neighborhoods. So, the one that ran through Midtown is called Midtown, for example. I mean, that's pretty obvious, pretty straightforward. But I wanted to set it up as a numerical system, because I think that's a little easier to navigate, especially if you're not a local. Like if you were a local, you'd probably call them by the areas they service, most likely. But I wanted to just give it a bit more logic and a bit more, I don't know. Honestly, I just thought it was a fun thing to do. So here we are. So I might be misremembering exactly what my thought process was, because as I'm sure you know at this point, this footage is quite old. This series is quite old, but I'll try my best to remember. I basically wanted to start at downtown and then establish groups of bus lines based on their distance from downtown. So the downtown lines are all in the hundreds. And then basically they're grouped by their direction and distance from downtown, but also I tried to consider the fact that newer bus lines would need to have numbers that would fit into this system as if they'd been tacked on later. So they're generally grouped by their relation to downtown. That's basically it. So you have the 100s in downtown, like I said. Then you have the 200s, which are just west of downtown. And by the way, at the time I was building this, I had no idea which direction was which. So if you see like downtown east there, that's actually west. I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyway, and then you have the 300s east of downtown. That's to the right as we're looking at it now. And this will all be changing as I go through the footage, of course, because I did a couple trials of this and just tried to make something that made sense. And of course, it took actually doing it and seeing that something didn't quite work or did work for me to keep it. So these things are going to change as I'm talking, but basically what we end up is what I've said. And then once you get farther west and you get toward like Cardston, which is basically another city, although it's technically within the authority of the main city of Alpenglow. But it's its own city in a way. Those are going to be in the 500s, I believe. And then there are a few that are in the 600s and 700s, which are basically bus lines that cross through the major areas. So you have like one that runs on the north end of downtown, and I believe that goes all the way to Cardston and goes all the way to the eastern end of the city. I forget exactly what the name of that is, but it's 700 something. And basically they do this to future-proof it, so as the city potentially expands and they're going to need to add new bus lines, they're going to go from, they're going to have, in theory, 100 bus lines for each region that they could fill up. Obviously, they're not going to do that. Like they have the crosstown, the 710 there. They're not starting at 701 and then they're going to add 702 and 703 because that's ridiculous. That makes it just really hard to follow. So with those ones, they're going like 710, 720, 730 because they know they're not going to need more than 10 bus lines eventually that cover that sort of area, because obviously the city is hemmed in by the mountains. So there's only so much physical space the city can take up, and therefore there are only so many bus lines that they can put down. All right, so that's my rant about the bus system of Alpenglow. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching this video, and I hope you'll join me on the next episode of Alpenglow, or if you're interested in a more detailed series, the next episode of Todos Santos, which is my city that's been inspired by beautiful Puerto Rico. Thanks for watching. Bye.